and welcome. My name is Geneviève Zubrzicki. I'm director of the Weiser Center for Europe and Eurasia and the Copernicus program in Polish Studies. And I have the pleasure tonight to welcome you. Rain today, at least it's not dangerous cold.
Zakopane
and we're here today to participate in our second event of the year that specifically commemorates the centennial of Polish national independence, or the reconstruction of the Polish state in 1918. So we had an event in the fall, and this winter we have a series of lectures and an exhibit, 100 Years of Polish Independence, Zakopane 1918, which is an exhibition of photographs from the archive of the Tatra Museum in Zakopane. It tells a very unusual story, that of the short-lived Republic of Zakopane, which was established in the concluding weeks of the First World War. And then the exhibit goes on to tell what happened in Zakopane afterwards, during and after World War II, to this day. The idea germinated a couple years ago in a conversation with Agnieszka Rudzińska, who's here from the Adam Mickiewicz Institute in Warsaw, when she told me this unusual story of an independent Republic of Zakopane. And I came back to Ann Arbor, told Marisha about this, and right away we decided to run with it. And of course Marisha knew the best person to help us make this happen, Maciej Krupa from Zakopane. And then we started a collaboration between the Tatra Museum in Zakopane, the Adam Mickiewicz Institute in Warsaw, and Maciej Krupa, who's a historian, and I will introduce him in a minute, so I won't go into the details of his biography. So he agreed, Maciej Krupa, to come to Ann Arbor to tell us about the multiple faces of Zakopane, which we think is a quaint mountain town, a resort town, but actually there's several layers of Zakopane that the exhibit tells us, and that Mr. Krupa will help us unveil over the next few days. Before introducing tonight's speaker, I'd like to thank our partners, so officially the Tatra Museum, the Adam Mickiewicz Institute in Warsaw, and Culture.pl, and which are Polish organizations with whom we work closely on this project. We're very pleased to have Agnieszka Rudzińska with us from the Adam Mickiewicz Institute. Welcome, Agnieszka. And we're also honored to have Ron Weiser with us tonight, former ambassador to Slovakia and regent of the University of Michigan, donor, creator, founder of the Weiser Center for Europe and Eurasia, and a close friend with a family tie also to Zakopane. So he and his family are part of the story that you will not here tonight, but that is in the exhibit, and that will be part of the talk also on Wednesday at noon. So now on to introducing our special guest. Maciej Krupa is a journalist and mountain guide who lives and works in Zakopane. He's an anthropologist and historian by training, and he's the co-founder of the local newspaper Tygodnik Podhalański. And a former BBC World Service producer. He has authored numerous books, countless publications on topics related to Zakopane and the Tatra Mountains. His most recent works in English include The Tatras, Zakopane, Podhale, different publications in 2018, The Outstanding Residents of the Zakopane Trail, 2017, and Zakopane Past and Present, 2004. I would like to invite Eileen to join us. Eileen Weiser, welcome. Thank you also for coming. And remind everyone that in addition to tonight's lecture on the Republic of Zakopane, Mr. Krupa will be speaking at noon on Wednesday on Zakopane as the Polish Athens, the center of Polish culture. And now please join me in offering a warm welcome to Mr. Krupa.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Geneviève, for a nice introduction, and thank you to everybody who made this happen, this exhibition and my visit here. And especially happy to see Aline and Ron Weiser here because we met in Zakopane something like 17 years ago, which started many interesting projects, especially restoration of the Jewish cemetery there. I will speak today about the Republic of Zakopane because that's the main topic of our exhibition, but of course it has a wider context, and I will concentrate on the Republic of Zakopane now, but on the exhibition you will see also what was before and after that, to put it in slightly wider context. Most of my talk I will read, excuse me, but English is not my mother tongue and I'm a little bit frightened of that, but I will try also to improvise. So, as it goes, 100 years of Polish independence, the Republic of Zakopane, 1918. The Republic of Zakopane is a symbolic description and a concept for a short but extremely important episode in the history of Zakopane, covering the period from October 13th to November 16th, 1918, when Zakopane, after 148 years of partitions and slavery, regained independence. I'm referring to 148 years instead of 123, which is common number because Zakopane was taken before that, before the last partition of Poland. The residents of Zakopane established the National Council headed by Stefan Żeromski. For over 4 weeks it played a role of political, administrative and military authority until the formation of the Polish state and when it subordinated to the government in Warsaw. Zakopane passed under foreign rule as early as in 1770, when the Austrian army took over the Nowy Targ county under the pretext of an outbreak of cholera. After the first partition of Poland in 1772, it was a part of Galicia, the new province of Austria, and remained there until 1918. At the beginning of the 20th century, Zakopane was already a well-known health resort, important place of tourism and recreation, as well as a respected center of national culture. Zakopane was also one of the centers of political activity of people from all three parts of occupied Poland, a convenient place for various secret political meetings and conspiracies. Many political groups, both leftist and right-wing, were active here or there. The independence movement was developing around Józef Piłsudski, who spent a longer periods of Zakopane. Józef Piłsudski was later on kind of a head of Polish state, marshal of Polish army, and the father of Polish independence. In 1910, there were on Polish soil celebrations of 500th anniversary of the victory in the Battle of Grunwald, known in literature as the Battle of Tannenberg. Kraków, as a former capital of the Kingdom of Poland, became the central place for celebrating the anniversary of Grunwald. The celebrations in Kraków with the unveiling of Grunwald Monument was the largest peaceful manifestation of Polishness during the partitions. After returning from the Kraków celebrations, Franciszek Pawlica, president of the Society of Highlanders Association, took the initiative to build the Grunwald Monument in Zakopane. The monument of King Władysław Jagiełło, designed by Wojciech Brzega, a famous Polish artist who studied also in Paris, was unveiled at the Market Square in Zakopane on August 20th, 1911. It has become an important place for organizing patriotic celebrations and demonstrations in Zakopane, both during the period of servitude and after regaining independence. It was a witness of the birth of Republic of Zakopane. The unveiling of the Grunwald Monument in Kraków inspired on the Polish territories annexed by Austria legal activity of paramilitary shooter organization, known in Polish as Strzelec, seeking to regain independence of Poland. In December 1912, this shooter association was established in Zakopane, and since 1913, Boy Scouts and Girl Guides have been operating under the command of Andrzej Małkowski and his wife Olga. After the outbreak of World War I, 3 organized volunteer troops set off from Zakopane in 1914. On 5th of August, a branch of the Shooter Association under the command of Kazimierz Wyczałkowski and Mariusz Zaruski. On August 16th, a branch of older scouts led by Andrzej Małkowski, and on September 17th, another paramilitary group under the command of Henryk Minkiewicz. Military operations did not reach Zakopane directly. It has become a base for so-called Polish legions. The offices and workshops of the Polish legions were created here, producing soldiers' equipment, organizing hospitals for sick and wounded soldiers, as well as help for refugees from war areas, collecting money and valuables for the benefit of the Polish military treasury. Zakopane funded and made a banner for the 3rd Infantry Regiment of the Polish Legions, which was solemnly passed on December 29, 1916. Stefan Żeromski, one of the greatest Polish writers, played an outstanding role during the First World War in Zakopane. From 1892 to 1921, in order to save his health, he spent a lot of time in Zakopane, sometimes living there for longer periods of time. He took an active part in social, cultural and political life in Zakopane, gave lectures, dealt with theater, was a member of various committees, social and educational organizations. Among other activities, in 1904, he was a co-organizer and then chairman of the public library, and in 1917 to 1919 he was the chairman and active member of the Zakopane Circle of the People's School Society. He organized courses for illiterate people, organized mobile libraries reaching the most remote villages, and prepared a series of lectures about Poland. The outbreak of World War I in 1914 found Żeromski in Wyżnie Hagi, a health resort on the southern side of the Tatra Mountains, nowadays in Slovakia, then in Hungary, from where he immediately returned to Zakopane. After an unsuccessful attempt to join the Polish legions throughout the war, he lived in Zakopane, taking an active part in political and social life. In the years 1914-1916, together with Jan Kasprowicz, one of the famous Polish poets of Young Poland period, he was a member of a secret organization striving to regain independence and unite all Polish lands. The conspirational meetings took place in the famous restaurant of Stanisław Karpowicz, located at Krupówki Street, the main street of Zakopane. It was here that the whole artistic and influential Zakopane Bohemia meet. In the evening, political meetings and conspirational work took place in the room of caricatures by artist Kazimierz Sichulski. From 1915 to 1918, Żeromski was active in the National Committee of Zakopane, the exposition of the Supreme National Committee. The committee's task was to support the Polish legions politically and materially. Żeromski was the deputy secretary of the committee. His duty was to write minutes of board meetings. He also chaired the economic section. As a result of his efforts, workshops for women were created in Zakopane. In autumn 1918, in the 4th year of the war, the defeat of Germany and Austria-Hungary became a fact. Russian Empire already collapsed a year before. In Zakopane, the initiative to liquidate the rule of the partitioner and take power came from the National Democracy, which was the right-wing political party. The beginnings were modest, as was mentioned by one of the leaders of Zakopane activists, a teacher, Medard Kozłowski. I'll quote for his memories. At the beginning of October 1918, I was summoned to Krakow when, from the heads of the National Democratic Party, I was ordered to prepare Zakopane for the upcoming fall of Austria. They were instructed to create a local national organization to which we were to draw, if possible, representatives of all the political factions. The task was not easy. However, During the entire war, the Ententophile moods prevailed in Zakopane, but our strength of national democracy was very modest. There were, in fact, 5 of us first, and then at the end we were 7. The biggest concern we have with the person to put at the forefront. Actually, in a different way, will Żeromski accept the presidency of the national organization, because we were convinced that only he can become the leader of the whole movement, unquote. Żeromski agreed immediately. Without asking permission from the authorities, Wincenty Regiec, the head of the Zakopane commune, on 13th of October 1918, by means of letters passed from hand to hand, called a large civic assembly. About 200 people from all spheres of the local society gathered in the hall of Sokół at the main market square. The political lecture was delivered by poet and novelist Stanisław Wyrzykowski, after which the National Organization Board was elected to take over the power in Zakopane. Żeromski became the president. His deputies, mentioned before, Franciszek Pawlica, associated with Peasants' Party PSL Piast, president of the Highlanders Union. The second deputy was Major Mariusz Zaruski, associated with the Legion camp, and the third, Wincenty Szymborski, on the part of National Democrats. You probably know name Szymborski. Wincenty Szymborski was the father of Wisława Szymborska, Polish Nobel laureate, who is going to be born a couple years later. The secretary was entrusted to Medard Kozłowski. Together with selected members, the board consisted of 32 people, among them 8 women, which was quite unusual for that time. So it was quite an open group of people. The resolution presented by lawyer Józef Dill focused on the creation of independent and united Poland, recognizing the Polish National Committee in Paris as a legal representation of the Polish nation against the victorious coalition countries. It also called for the state to join Polish Spisz, known in Zips in English literature, and Orawa, Arwa, to the new state. The national organization was in fact dominated by the national democracy. Preparations for the liquidation of the power of the partitioner and the seizure of government continued for 2 weeks. In Zakopane, there were several hundred military soldiers of various degrees, mostly professional officers. Besides, it was a branch of the guard, the composition of many nationalities. There were German Austrians, Czechs, Ruthens, and Poles, and a strong branch of the gendarmerie. While in Zakopane at the Red Cross Hospital, Polish officers in the Austrian service, after establishing contact with the Krakow's Polish military organization, formed a secret officers' committee for the purpose of military seizure. It was headed by Lieutenant Marian Bolesławicz, members of the reserve lieutenants Kazimierz Olszewski, Adam Witwicki, and Tadeusz Janowski. They informed Żeromski about their intentions in strict confidence. In confidential conversations, Żeromski emphasized that the disarmament of the Austrian garrison should be done possibly without bloodshed. During the military coup, several Polish officers joined that officers' committee. After years, in 1927, one of the participants of disarming the Austrians described these events. Now will be a longer quote. Before 8 o'clock in the morning, came from Kraków telephone message that finally the Austrians were disarmed. A few minutes after this news arrived, several officers gathered for a secret council in room number 16. Host of the room chaired the meeting. It was Lieutenant of Austrian Artillery, secret member of the Polish military organization, Marian Bolesławicz, today Colonel and General Chief of Staff in Kraków. Today it is difficult to name exactly who was present. There were the then second lieutenant of the Austrian army, Dr. Michał Grażyński, today's voivode of Silesia, second lieutenant Sroczyński, second lieutenant Michalewski, and somebody else. The meeting was short. Lieutenant Bolesławicz ordered immediate meeting of Poles, officers, soldiers and aspirants in his room. Soon dozen officers gathered in and about 30 soldiers. Bolesławicz briefly explained the situation and the necessity of immediate action to let Zakopane free. However, the intended and decided action was not a simple matter. It was necessary to control the Red Cross hospital, when one could count about 100 officers and 600 privates of different nationalities, mostly Germans, generally not too sick, as well as the headquarters of the institution supported by strong, over 100 people counting garrison infantry company, normally armed and being alerted for last 2 days. There was a substantial stock of guns and ammunition. Railroad station on Hramcówki Street has a strong military police squad made up of more than 40 people, also well armed. When the adjacent military barracks, numbering about 12 policemen, equipped with a prime weapon. At the same time, it was necessary to control at least a railway station and a post office. And here it turned out that none of the revolutionary officers setting off to work, in addition to a bad saber, had not even a bad gun. But soon Lieutenant Bolesławicz, a former officer of the legions, took over on its own initiative command of a company of soldiers practicing at a meadow nearby. And soon, using very cleverly the appropriate commands, he managed to disarm it, to the astonishment of the Austrians. The revolutionary army of the few officers and a dozen of soldiers got the rifles. Only Bolesławicz had a Browning revolver. That's the end of the quote. By midday, October 31st, 1918, the officers' committee carried out the disarmament of the guard unit, took over and secured the guardhouse, the magazine of weapons and ammunition. Polish soldiers, after taking oaths of loyalty to the future Polish state, took over the guard service. Soldiers of foreign nationalities were imprisoned under house arrest. Then the gendarmerie was disarmed and the post office and railway station were seized. Zakopane, along with surrounding Tatra valleys, was free from the occupant. Meanwhile, despite many attempts to telephone the Kraków, messages like "Here's Stadtkommando Krakow" were received. It was only after a few hours of full tension then a report was made: "Here's the Polish command of the city of Kraków." Meanwhile, I have to explain, there was a dispute in Poland about which part of Poland, which town or city or village of Poland was free first. And there was discussion, because everybody wanted to be first, obviously, between Kraków, Tarnów and Zakopane. And each of these towns, cities, claimed we were first. But now, due to the very thorough check in the archives and dates, because it happened everywhere on the 31st of October. But in fact, Tarnów was first. Few minutes after 5 in the morning, they disarmed Austrians there and took over the control over the city. Then was Kraków about noon and Zakopane early afternoon, so Zakopane was third. But because Zakopane was a village at that time, we claim that Zakopane was the first village in the Polish territory which got free first. And this is definitely true. Two officers, Lieutenant Marian Bolesławicz and Dr. Captain Gustav Nowotny, went to Secretary of the National Organization, Medard Kozłowski, and informed him about the liquidation of the Austrian garrison and the willingness to surrender under the orders of the Polish civilian authority. Together, they came to Żeromski's villa, named Władysławka, now it's called Czerwony Dwór, the Red Manor, still exists, at Kasprusie Street. There, after submitting the report, they asked for further orders. In the afternoon, at 3 p.m., there was a meeting of the National Organization composed of Stefan Żeromski, Fraciszek Pawlica, Wincenty Szymborski, Medard Kozłowski, together with army representatives, Marian Bolesławicz and Major Ottokar Brzoza-Brzeziński. It took place in the building of the commune office at the market square. For the next day, they scheduled meeting of the full board of the national organization. In the evening, Father Józef Winkowski, a catechist of Zakopane Gymnasium, celebrated a holy mass in the parish church with the participation of the faithful. After the thankful Te Deum, he gave a solemn patriotic sermon. They also sang a patriotic hymn, Boże coś Polskie, which is a religious hymn which was kind of a second unofficial anthem of Poland. Convened on November 1st, meeting of the full board of the national organization transformed into the National Council as a temporary power in Zakopane in place of the state and the Polish government. A dozen or so representatives of the local left were co-opted for the council to get the full representativeness of all social strata. The aim of the council was to immediately carry out the liquidation of Austrian rule in Zakopane and ensure the safety of its inhabitants. Members of the council took the oath to be faithful to the Polish state, repeating the text of the oath written by Żeromski. The oath was taken also from the senior officer, Captain Roman Iszkowski. At the request of the National Council, Zakopane printing house of Jan Trybuła printed a poster with an appeal and a full list of members of the National Council. And you will see the picture of that poster on our exhibition. A civic guard was established to guard the order, and they removed the imperial eagle from the building of the municipality, replacing it with the Polish national white eagle. The next day, on November 2nd, at noon, a ceremony of pledging allegiance to the state and the Polish nation took place in the commune office. In an occasional speech, Żeromski referred to the books of pilgrims by most regarded Polish romantic poet Adam Mickiewicz, ending with these words, quote, "There is now a moment when our constitutional assembly in Warsaw will stand on the rubble of Tsardom and Germanium. It will take over the supreme power and give the highest law. Let us rejoice, citizens, that we have a chance in our small world to contribute to the happiness of the great motherland, to meet this miracle on which we look with our happy eyes, the miracle of the resurrection of Poland," unquote. After the speech, there was an act of oath given by Jan Mieloch, deputy head of the municipality, Romuald Wilczek, the inspector of the health resort, school principals, Stanisław Barabasz, Adam Wilusz and Helena Stanowska, postmaster, Roman Safiak, the head of the railway station, Adolf Brzeczka, and in the name of the Jewish community, Markus Statter. The oath was confirmed by shaking hand with the head of the National Council, Stefan Żeromski. Then, at the monument of King Władysław Jagiełło on the market square after the speech of Dr. Kazimierz Dłuski, a large group of Polish soldiers and officers was sworn in by senior officer Roman Iszkowski. A piece of paper with that text had survived, creamy piece of paper on which Żeromski wrote in pencil, "We are here, all members of the board of the national organization, National Council, in Zakopane. Acting as a temporary power in Zakopane, we pledge allegiance to the Polish nation and its delegation, the only power, the Polish government in Warsaw." By the way, the Polish government in Warsaw at that time didn't exist yet. On Sunday, November 3rd, at a special meeting of the Municipal Council in Zakopane, convened and held under the chairmanship of Jan Mieloch, deputy head of the community, all councillors present were sworn to obey the authority of the new Polish government. The Education Commission of the National Council in Zakopane agreed, inter alia, to remove portraits of the emperor from schools and replacing them with Polish national emblem and portraits of Polish kings and other famous Poles, as well as to make necessary changes in history textbooks for pupils. New county governor from the closest town of Zakopane, Nowy Targ, appointed by the Polish Liquidation Committee in Kraków, approved new Zakopane authorities. Republic of Zakopane, with the president Stefan Żeromski, for several days was one of the few first fragments of independent Poland. Republic of Zakopane had its own armed force and led its own foreign policy. One of the first actions of the new authorities was to take control over Polish villages in the Arwa region belonging to Hungary. Major Mariusz Zaruski on October 31st, 1918, went to Nowy Targ and took over the command of the local military garrison, where disarmament of officers and soldiers of foreign nationalities was carried out earlier. And Lieutenant Jerzy Lgocki went with the same mission to village Czarny Dunajec, where he also have recruited volunteers for the Polish army. In agreement with Stefan Żeromski, Zaruski decided to take over Polish villages in Orawa. On November 6th, a group of 13 soldiers who had been sent from Zakopane before arrived on a special train from Czarny Dunajec to Sucha Góra, the first railway station on the Hungarian side, and disarmed 9 Hungarian gendarmes and established quarters at the railway station. A nearby Głodówka village was also taken. Stefan Żeromski, in consultation with the National Committee in Nowy Targ, sent priest Jan Humpola to Sucha Góra as a representative of the National Council in Zakopane. The priest, together with Lieutenant Lgocki and another priest, Ferdynand Machaj, from Orawa, hosted a conference on November 14th in Trzciana, in Slovakian Trstena, with Hungarian Governor Bulla to ensure the security of the local population. At the meeting with the Slovak National Council in Dolny Kubin, the Polish delegation put forward arguments for joining parts of Orawa inhabited by the Polish population to Poland. In this way, the Republic of Zakopane, in the name of still non-existent Polish state, hence demonstrated Polish rights to Orawa. Sucha Góra and Głodówka were occupied by the so-called expeditionary force until December 24th, 1918. On Sunday, November 10th, from the train station in Zakopane, several dozens of Italian military prisoners were sent back home. They were properly equipped and additionally provided with a farewell letter from the National Council. These were prisoners of the Austrian army. They stayed in Zakopane from 1916 and were employed at the logging in the Tatra Mountains on the estate of Jerzy Uznański. On November 16th, 1918, the National Council of Zakopane came to an end, and the Republic of Zakopane, Rzeczpospolita Zakopiańska, whose president was Stefan Żeromski, ceased its existence. The authority was handed over to the institutions of the newly formed Polish state. And after 7 years, Stefan Żeromski wrote these words, reminding his role in Zakopane between October 31st and November 16th, 1918. I held this unforgettable, absurd and lofty office while Mummy Austria was collapsing into ruins. I solemnly swore in the army, the police, the post office and the telegraph agency, pledging them to loyalty to the new state. I have even begun a war in order to seize back the villages of Głodówka and Sucha Góra from a Czech invasion. In fact, that Żeromski, an outstanding writer and social activist, took over political power in Zakopane in name of the Polish state with universal consent was not a mere coincidence. It was a confirmation of his great authority, which he gained over a dozen years among the inhabitants of the city. And in Europe, I know only the second example when the writer became a president. It's Václav Havel in former Czechoslovakia and later the Czech Republic. And that's a pity that now in our countries, good writers are not elected for this high office, in my humble opinion. A new chapter has started in the history of Zakopane and in the history of Poland. But this is a completely different story. Thank you for your attention.